Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And I have, in effect, a brother that is entrenched in so many different things when we think about community. He actually taking brothers camping and young brothers camping and learning different ways of forestry, living off the land, but also at Insoma Institute. He was one of the most beloved instructors there. A lot of little homies there, which now are like all like in their 20s and 30s and stuff. Were always like Baba Moudou, Baba Moudou, Baba Moudou. So I already said his name. And he also has a very special project coming to his hometown and a place that's a stone's throw from over here at Detroit is Different podcast studios.
Mm-hmm.
Baba Moudou, how are you, my brother?
What up, though? Peace, man. How you doing, dear brother?
Oh, man. Everything is cool, man.
Very well. Very well.
Cool, man. It's been a long time running. Definitely, when I think about people inside our community that have been assets to our community in different ways and just always like that cool demeanor, you've been there, man, especially when I really think about African-centered education. You blessed our stage for a lot of studios speaking about that with Mama Elizabeth and Piper, and your role as a brother in that space, a younger brother at the time, in helping usher the work of that institution into something that lasted for so long.
Right on, man. It was an actual blessing. And I like to acknowledge you too, man. One of the things that keeps me going is knowing that we have fellow comrades out here doing the thing, man. You know, some of us just keep our head focused on our goal and our contribution. So, yeah, man, that was a beautiful point in my life. Amazing growth. It was a place where I learned so much, everything from community organizing to myself, And it was just a very special time, man. So I was blessed to be even affiliated with it. And so when it closed, I had a directive by my elders that says, first you are a student, then you are an assistant of an institution. And then ultimately you get to the point where you have to look to build an institution.
That's deep. So even before we get there, we got to start our class at Detroit is a different way. But I love we went there, and we're going to pick up with more of this in it as the discussion around African-centered education seems to be so prevalent in the city of Detroit. But what brought your people here, man? How many generations deep is you to the soil of here, man? Whereabouts y'all from, man?
That's a dope question. One half came straight up from Mississippi, Tupelo, Mississippi. Yeah. Oh, boy. Rice land and everything else. And then the other half come from Tennessee.
Whereabouts Tennessee?
Chattanooga region.
Okay, so both more west than most, because there's so many families, as I've learned in this, from Alabama, Georgia.
Alabama
and Georgia and Detroit. It's what I'm saying. That was the migration patterns along with the train lines. What led first? Let's go Mississippi, because it's not a lot from Mississippi. More of them go over to Chicago, possibly even further out west to LA or something. So I'm guessing you got family in Chicago like ever. But Mississippi to Detroit, how did that happen?
My family, they were pretty established. They had cleared enough ground in, I guess, the Mississippi, as I was told, where, they were able to have their land and sufficient food. But they also had 5 brothers, and my grandfather and his brothers. And, it was just that time, man. My grandfather and his brothers, they weren't really having it. So
how and when you say that, I'm guessing you're talking about just the overt racism that we were dealing with there.
So one particular incident, where there was some issues about killing of the family hogs, that wandered over on a neighbor's plot, and of course they were confronted by the local rednecks, but apparently my uncles and my grandfather had already established a reputation to not to be trifled with.
Mm.
So the neighboring family, though they were moving on their white privilege, they were clearly intimidated. And so that point, that's when my great grandfather said, "You boys got to get out of here."
Well, in the brothers, was your grandfather the oldest, youngest, middle, or you don't even know the order?
Yeah, good question. He was the second oldest, and
Okay.
which is interesting because, of course, he was being rebellious to that point.
Mhm.
So my oldest, well, my Aunt May, who was the oldest sibling, she was even more of a firebrand, and she had dealt with everything from sexual assault to working the fields to working the washing marts to actually having to give up her child. That's a whole nother deep saga. So she came first, and she was actually that first wave of sisters that got involved in the wartime industries.
I want you to expand upon that because I think that in the movement for so much that is being contextualized about the oppressive racism that exists, it's a lot of oppressive sexism that exists
Yes.
in the story of this American arc. But sisters, when I talk to a lot of people and get the stories, function in different ways throughout this American story. Hence, our community has functioned differently. So there were so many sisters in positions that you never thought would have been there. So it sounds like your aunt, so that's your brother's older sister,
Yeah.
was kind of the one that was already like set the standard where her brothers followed.
Yeah. And like she explained, she dealt with double levels of oppression. Yeah. Whereas, as a black woman dealing with a very racist white Mississippian society, but then she also indicated that there was an oppression, internal oppression within family, where you had licentious family members. And so if you don't have an outlet to neither law enforcement nor family, there's only one way to go. And so she got out as soon as she could. And she did amazing work, like so many of our matriarchs. She came up, got involved in the wartime industries. Actually, yeah, we see Rosie Riveter as a redhead, but it was a lot of sisters. And she got her first property up here on Normandy off Puritan. And she literally financed her two brothers to come up here, financed their houses, so that they would have a place to land. Of course, the GI Bill wasn't as generous, but once they got established, yeah, that's how that side of the family got up here. So big shout to Aunt May.
So that's World War II.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so World War II, Aunt May held it down, navigating this space. Was there other family up here, or she just chose Detroit?
Well, from that side, she just chose Detroit. This was the first. On my father's side, we had been up here since, I would say, the late 30s, actually.
Okay, so even World War One.
Yeah, yeah. My great grandfather is coming up from Tennessee once again. He was a victim of dual oppression, and this is something that I guess is an unspoken thing. Yeah, he was a victim of child abuse. So at the age of 14, he cut out. And dealing with the racist Tennessee thing. So he just showed up in Detroit. He walked up here.
Wow, one second, time out.
Well, of course, we always see people walking all night through the trudging rain, but yeah, he made his way up here.
Time out, boy. That's a dedication. What about Detroit stood out to him? Especially we're looking at like a World War One era Detroit. That's not the Chattanooga. You'd imagine that would have been a Chicago, Gary, Indiana, maybe even a St. Louis or something. But what?
Well, a lot of people don't realize that even though Detroit was extremely hard for black folks, even though there was a liberation hub, there were other sub centers in the area. Like a lot of people don't know, Royal Oak was a major landing point for black people in the Detroit area. So Royal Oak Township was where he came.
Okay, and I like you uplifted that. So for people that don't know, Royal Oak is one of the suburbs that is, I guess, especially like when we think of like the 90s, 2000s era, somewhat now, it's actually a big call in Oakland County to get a lot of black businesses to come to Royal Oak and do business. There's a couple restaurants that have opened there, but for most of my time, Royal Oak was definitely like an underline, like if you black,
Be
you can
careful,
come,
right?
but you
And
better
that's the
button your
irony,
shirt
isn't
up,
it?
and you better button your shirt up and have your hands on the 10 and the 3 if you're driving through the sound.
Yeah.
And next to it is Royal Oak Township, which was always like an Inkster, a suburb welcoming of a lot of black families. And I don't, the history there, and I like that you open that up, is in this next 10 years that Detroit is different. I want to get into some more of those types of stories.
Yeah.
So Royal Oak Township is where he's at, and he had a destination to head to the Detroit area.
Well, he had a lot of agricultural skills, and when he got up here, he was looking for work, and so he was very skilled at that. And so that's where, believe it or not, when 8 Mile Road baseline was farm country, and so he went out there to work and apply his skills, and he was very successful at it.
And wait, you said another thing that I want to highlight for people in Detroiters. So oftentimes, as people say, he talks so much during the interview. I talk because I want to contextualize the Detroit in our interview too. So 8 Mile Road, that Eminem's movie is named after, that a lot of the world thinks of when they think of Detroit, is a road that is historic because technically on the other side of 8 Mile, you're no longer in Detroit. But on certain points of 8 Mile, it's a street that's called Baseline. And I never even knew what you were talking about till then. So Baseline was like a part of like the farmlands that would be along these lines.
Yeah, it was considered baseline because after that it was just the woods. It was wilderness,
Now
and so so that was the end of the formal city and the beginning of the country. And so my great grandfather did very well. Just a little note, and I'm always proud to say this: when you go to Kroger on 8 Mile, that's where our family farm plot was. Yeah.
Wow.
So the Kroger on 8 Mile, and then right across the
8 Mile
street,
in Wyoming, I'm
8
guessing.
Mile in Wyoming, yeah. And then across the street, you'll see a small red brick building. And that's where the family laundromat used to be. So we had he had established a pretty healthy business, couple businesses right there at the Kroger on 8 Mile in Wyoming area. It was a junkyard, it was a laundromat, and it was a nice farm there that we worked for years. Yeah.
So with this, your family comes to Detroit, and I'm guessing now is like immediately kind of ushered into that tradition of what develops into this space of black folks making opportunity even through the racism. Because let's be clear,
Yes.
it's not like coming to Detroit, you're walking and it's Wakanda.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Dealing with other forms of things, but they're navigating it. So that now it just, I guess, leads to your parents.
Yeah. So yeah, and then my parents, of course, my grandfather, that's my great grandfather, and so just another historical note: when the Federal Freeways Act came about and they expanded 8 Mile, there were a lot of black people who lost land, and my family was one of them. And so we entered into like a lawsuit with the federal government that lasted 30 plus years,
When
to
did
fully
the lawsuit
resolve.
start?
I don't even try to be exact, but it happened.
When did it wrap up?
We didn't really get settlement until like the early 70s.
Wow.
And in lieu of that, they had given out like partial payments. So they basically took the land, the Federal Freeways Act took a lot of black land and expanded federal roadways and freeways. And so for the black people that had been disenfranchised, it was a sort of hold on for your check situation. So my great grandfather found himself, with a partial deposit for land that he had developed and 9 children, with my great grandfather being one of them. And he was a new widow, believe that, a single black man with 9 children.
1 second. Time out.
Yeah.
Let me get this right. And these are other things that kind of color and accent my understanding of what America has been for black people.
Yeah, true that.
And why within it it's so difficult to disregard what has happened.
Yeah.
especially when you see how it aligns with the things that still happen to this day. So,
Absolutely.
and it's unique for you all that don't know. We're doing this on the 4th of July, as funny as it is.
Right.
So, I'm just pulling the bullet points of what you're saying. So your grandfather comes here, escaping the oppression of the overt and violent, psychologically oppressive acts of the racism in Tennessee. Walks from state to state, ends up in Metro Detroit, Royal Oak Township. From there, with his skills that he has from his head and what he knows about the land as a farmer and an agrarian, a master agrarian, he amasses the success of having enough farmlands and starting businesses. And this success model is built where now he, with his wife, share a family of 9 children. And in an agrarian society, like when people say oftentimes, man, they used to have a lot of kids. A lot of kids meant that you had a lot of people that would help to tending what would happen with the farming of the land. So some of it was, it
was practical
abundance, but also it was a little bit of like, you know what I'm saying? We need somebody else out there tilling stuff. So that success is built. And now a Freeways Act comes.
Yeah.
He loses his wife, and now he's with 9 children.
Yes.
And he's told, hey, we know we did you bad. You're going to get something. And that becomes a 30-year wait.
Yes.
While this is happening, your grandfather.
Yeah, my grandfather.
And his siblings, his other 8 siblings, are figuring out what's happening with mom, dealing with the grief of the mom passing, and also probably like in such a real life, like surreal moment of not only having lifestyle, having pride, having that confidence of like, okay, we can do this, and our family's building things and engaging in community with business and also in farming, to damn, the government can take away whatever we build.
Yeah.
1, 2, now you're probably dealing with some of those traditional arcs of the scarcity fears that so many people have. And then 3, for your grandfather, it's like, well, damn, I just did all of this farming here. And they tell me I can go down the street. How long will it take before they turn another freeway act? Because another thing about 8 Mile, as I say, like baseline, 8 Mile is a freeway.
Yeah.
So because 8 Mile is a freeway, well, really a highway, I guess you would say, it, I guess, will fall under that now. And you'd almost not even imagine this whole idea of what you're saying, that it's nothing but farmlands and fields of what we would look at as quote unquote the woods on the other side of 8 Mile, because that is where most of my life, a lot of the exodus of Detroit that began in the 1960s as more black people started coming to Detroit, they started moving further away.
And that ironic, they moved to original black. Well, anyway, so
and ironically, they moved to where black folks was in the first place in farming after it was taken over by eminent domain. So these are like the dualities. Like cyclical. I say, I had to pause, and when we really think about what's happening in this nation, it's the real life stories that I can grab onto, and not the academic, and no offense to the academics, but not the academic statistics that you can show me. It's like, damn, this really was Moudou's family, where I shopped at that Kroger.
Yeah, and it's interesting driving past, man. It's like I give a ashe, man, and the brick building's still there, but the story gets more interesting because at this time, Noah Bash and my grandfather had began and already entertained ideas of nationalism before it was considered that back then. And so
at that point, what are you considered? I did everything correctly. I wasn't, I didn't become the radical that I was facing. God knows what he was facing in Tennessee. The amount of lynchings that were happening in Tennessee specifically, damn near, you just bump into a white person and it's like, hey, let's put them on a tree. So you escape that, you come here and it's like, okay, let me sort of try this. I mean, this is naturally going to tap you into something where it's like, okay, we need to empower beyond what they say is on paper.
Yeah. So he linked up with a group of brothers, 7 of them. And said, now, mind you, during this period, we had just passed the Great Depression. Black folks were still suffering financially and physically, like with food scarcity.
I would say
people don't know. Oh, I'm sorry.
I want to add a point to that. Like, Kari talking so much during interviews. My grandmother's room right here that we're in.
Oh, right.
Ask her. I remember when we first learned about the Depression, me and my sister. It was like, what was the Depression like? It was like we was poor and we ain't had much, so it was like every other day.
yeah. You know, that's similar to what I hear.
That I always joke, like COVID-19 for communities like mine. Moudou don't stay that far from me. It's like you ain't got a job, you ain't got no money, and you could possibly die. I'm like, okay, well that was Linwood and Davidson.
I mean,
in
reality,
2021, 2020. 2012.
Watch who you hang around, keep a distance, all that stuff.
That's been the reality over here for forever. It's just that America panicked during that time.
Right.
That's a Tuesday over here. You know what I'm saying? But continue.
Yeah, so he powered up, man. He got with 7 other brothers and realizing, remember, food scarcity was real. Like even for mainstream America, there are people starving in the 30s, and we don't really relate to that. You know, some of our elders, they still eat the cornstarch and stuff, but we don't relate and have an understanding of there was real starvation, famine in the United States. And so in response to that, these 7 brothers, they went up to, rebellious young brothers, man. They went to Homer, Michigan, which is next door to Albion, Michigan. Albion was a underground railroad spot, very liberal, very accepting of black folks. It was a farming community. But my great grandfather being upset, he said, I'm going to the next county and I'm gonna buy prime land in the middle of Rednecksville. So him and these 7 brothers, they put their money together and they went in on like 200 acres.
Wow.
Yeah, in the middle of Calhoun County, Homer Village. Needless to say, the locals were not happy. And so they began to get threats, people like physical threats. And the guys, a lot of my great-grandfather's homies got intimidated and dropped out.
I'd imagine.
So my great-grandfather was like, nah, I ain't going out like that. So he built his house. By now, my grandfather was off to the war. He built the house up there, had the kids up there.
World War II, I'm guessing.
Yeah, World War II, yeah. And was holding it down,
What branch?
My grandfather, he was in the Army. He was the Army, yeah. And that was another amazing story too. But yeah, so he's up there. He builds a house. He has this land. His business partners drops out on him. He doesn't know how he's going to pay for the land. And so like so many of us, he gets creative. He realizes it's southwestern Michigan. He starts growing grapes. Then he starts to create apple orchards out there. And he has prime hunting land, so he starts to lease it to hunters. From the grapes and the apples, he began to press very good wine. The hunters loved his wine, and they loved to come and hunt on his land, so he made money that way. But then he also took advantage of hunters' other proclivities, which sometimes meant that they would like to entertain other female clients. So great-granddaddy set up a series of trailers on his hunting property. And so for those individuals who, not to be too explicit. And then the other thing he made money on was cannabis. So to pay for the land. Yeah.
With this, and I want to frame this as you just shared that a little bit differently. Your grandfather sounds like, oh man, your great grandfather sounds like one hell of a dude.
Yeah, he was a G, man.
I think we need a film on him. When we do that documentary project, please get Kari Frazier in the mix of helping in some way.
Howard G. Petty. Yeah.
So what was his name?
Howard G. Petty.
Howard G. Petty. And it's funny, his last name is Petty too. I like it.
Yeah.
So like from his journey and understanding more of the design and the functionality of America, he's like, okay, this is how I need to get down. And these will be the advantages in this system.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can only imagine some of those other brothers probably still just in my mind got their families and other stakeholders, probably their wives, is like, this is getting crazy. We don't want to get, I mean, we've left the
Yeah.
South to not get lynched, and we about to get lynched up here in the North.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's like, hey, let Howard do what Howard doing, and Howard had
Crazy
to be
Howard and his
resilient
kids.
beyond
Yeah.
what that was.
Yeah, he had to. He had the children, so he had to feed them off the land. It wasn't. He didn't have the flexibility as other partners. So, but to their credit, man, they were bringing truckloads of food to the city, feeding black folks, man. And you know, part of, you know, toward the end when he, you know, ended up being the lone one, you know, even into this day, the charter of the land is this is for the recreation, the benefit, protection, and the feeding of black folks. You know. And that was the last thing he left with. Like, yo, this land is for the stabilization of black folk and for the enjoyment. You know?
And this is like practical work that's very pragmatic before the theorist of like you know, it's no and this is not to admonish anything like that. It's like your grandfather wasn't reading Black Label White Wealth.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know, Neely Fuller. He didn't have Amos Wilson. This was just his understanding of like, yo, this is what I'm dealing with, and this is the solution that I see for my people. So this, I think, also shows like a consciousness and community that existed. So I can only imagine the impacts of your grandfather on your father.
Yeah. So my grandfather, being the son of this G, you know, he goes off to war. And so, of course, he comes back in a new era, this post-World War II, new economy. The concept of agrarian existence is passe.
Industrial age is really cementing as so.
Yeah. So he comes back as a hero. You know, him and his black troops, they fought in Normandy. They came back super highly decorated. Like, you know, proud of my granddad. He's a war hero. Upon arriving in New York Harbor, they stripped him of all his stuff. It's like, nigga, get down there and load that luggage. So, you know, that informed my grandfather as well. So when he came back from the Army, he utilized his GI Bill, became an engineer, started working for public schools of Detroit, inducted a lot of black boiler makers and black boiler workers in the city, and maintained the land. You know, he was the primary out of his nine siblings. He was the maintainer of the farmland too.
Okay, so he was kind of like the lead in reference to that.
Yeah.
On that project, which that's a hell of a project to maintain.
Yeah,
I can only imagine the type of staff that it takes for 200 acres of land.
Well, luckily, you know, he had a couple brothers and sisters, but mind you, my great grandfather was still up there. My great grandfather stayed up till 85, and he was blind, living by himself. So, my great grandfather was up there. They were doing like rural landscaping, cutting logs, clearing fields, for planting, creating trails, digging out canals. So it was a pretty good business my great grandfather had. But it was one of those things where he's like, you know, my grandfather he's doing well, he's making money, streets are paved, air conditioning. He's like, come on, Dad, come to the city. He's like, nah, man, you stay in the city. I'm staying up here. So my great grandfather, realizing the importance of maintaining land, would go back and forth, you know, work with his father, come down here. And so when my great grandfather passed, of course, he took it over. He took over. So at that point, you know, it wasn't enough bodies around, and this is where he had to start. You know, I like to say this. He became he started sharecropping with local white farmers. So local white farmers that needed to farm, he became their sharecropper, and that's where he started growing corn and soybean and other things because he couldn't maintain the farm and the home here.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like 5 full-time jobs for one person. So another hat off to Mr. Howard.
It's a family joke. Like, man, granddad had white sharecroppers. Damn.
I mean,
but you know, it's called contract farming. It wasn't as abusive or exploitive. But
and so also, I like that you brought that up. And please review my interview with Roderick Miller, that was once the lead of the DGC here in the city of Detroit, that comes from his town in Mississippi, that so much sharecropping was abundant as well. So like a lot of things in America, like on paper, conceptually, the Constitution is an amazing document.
Conceptually.
Amazing. Conceptually. The reality of how it's enacted ain't nothing like what's on paper, especially for people like me and Moudou. Sharecropping on paper, it makes sense. I own the land, we sharing some crops, you tend to it, it works perfect.
Right.
The challenge was, this was the family that just enslaved my people. So you would come with like just, let's say, 100 tomatoes. The thought process is, okay, I'm only going to get 10 of those tomatoes or 15 or whatever, because I ain't get out there and I ain't do no work. You tend into it. You deserve to walk away with 85 of them tomatoes.
Yeah.
You know, and for these 15, you can share in it. For an additional 15, I'll let you keep that house on the land and you can stay there.
Yeah.
Now, when you give your 100 tomatoes, I'm going to look at them and I'm going to say, this one bad, this one bad, this one bad, this one bad. Well, we look up and the only ones that I say is you only got 5. Now, for the bad ones, I'll take this. So 3 bad ones equals 1 good one.
Yeah.
This is the challenge. And then
you owe me next season.
The justice system where you try to talk trash about it, but once again, you're dealing with the good old boys. You know what I'm saying?
That's it.
The judges, the sheriffs, the public works committee, you know what I'm saying, of whatever that time and era, and they're not honoring you.
Yeah.
They're just gonna believe the person that used to enslave you and say, hey, you need to figure out better ways to tend to better crops.
That's yep.
And this is what made that so oppressive.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know, like, you know, the face of oppression in America is often through business contracts. You know, the courts enforce it, but the first iteration of exploitation from our people came from business. But yeah, so it was a beautiful thing. My grandfather comes, decorated war hero, becomes a worker of the boilers and the heaters, you know, for Detroit public schools. So, you know, up comes my dad from that. On the other side, my mom, their families right down the street from each other. So you know how this divine thing works. They became high school sweethearts, and you know, they marry, and here I come, you know.
Okay. So what neighborhood?
Right here, man. Pilgrim Village, you know, Pilgrim and Woodrow Wilson, Pilgrim and 12th Street area, you know, so same hood, man.
So, and I mean, that's like the neighborhood we in. What do you remember coming up? Moudou got me by a couple years.
Yeah.
So he's seen, like, even me sometimes, like I look at some of as they're redesigning Dexter, 41, gonna be 42. And there was a point in time where I was like, man, Dexter's kind of rough, and then you look up and it's like, damn, Dexter got rougher. What was?
I can remember a time. I hope I'm not aging. I can remember a time when Dexter was like where you would go shopping, where black folk would go shopping. It was like Livernois at this time. It was like, you know, you can go, you can get some very good clothes, food, everything you needed, and it was a lot of money. You know, I had that Motown money still hanging. You had the D-boy money, so it was a lot of money going on in Dexter. It was a really nice, you know, stable place. But yeah, then you know what happened. The cocaine tidal wave came, and it was a wrap.
Yeah,
so.
I know. It's like Dexter was the first place. Now many because of other things, but it's like Dexter was the first place where I saw McDonald's closed. I was like, damn,
yeah, it's tight, right?
McDonald's can't.
It's tight.
Can't stay open over here. What is going on?
Yeah,
my man. But so. Growing up over here, what do you remember most? What was the feel like? And then also, as I asked that, what were your parents doing during that time?
Oh man, yeah. Growing up here was, you know, I was always saying, you could probably relate to this, man. We would wake up every morning to the smell of bacon, bread, and Hostess baked goods. I don't know if you recall that they closed too. Do you remember when? Well, you yeah.
I remember. Okay, so 2 things about that. Hostess, definitely. I mean, the street used to be named Twinkie Lane.
Yeah, right. You know,
so Hostess Factory is like right over here, but also the thing that I liked most was not Hostess, but the Knutsen's factory that was over there off what would that be? I guess that would be Oakman, or no, Hamilton. Like not far from where Nandi's Knowledge Cafe is.
Yeah.
And the Knutsen's, because that's where my grandma, because we always like Newtons over the Hostess.
Okay, yeah. Well, you know, it's funny, man. It's irony. It's a blessing, man. We're not sitting here like morbidly obese, bro, because we came up with Sanders. Like literally in our neighborhood as youth.
But
Yeah, we had Sanders.
That's what I'm saying.
We had Hostess.
Yeah,
we had the Baccaris coffee joint that was constantly pumping out coffee and sweets, and then we had the bread joint. So every morning, man, you would wake up to the smell of like muffins, toast, coffee. You know what I mean? Baked goods. And like if you lived in the hood, you can go to Hostess, so you can get them for $1, like fresh off the thing.
Oh yeah, it was
still hot, almost like
So yeah, that's why I'm messing up. Newtons is off 7 Mile, and I always liked them. But Sanders, that's what I remember. We always used to go to Sanders.
Yeah,
with the like the coffee cakes and the caramel cake, and
man, it was just So growing up here was really dope. As you know, it's like a semi-industrial neighborhood. So I spent a lot of time walking the railroad tracks, jumping fences and breaking into warehouses I shouldn't have been walking around. It was a real dope adventure. I mean, childhood, because it had green spaces in it. And so, as you know, along the railroad tracks, you still had those aquarial, I'm butchering the name, ponds that will come every. So you catch your tadpoles and your frogs. So it was a really good experience. And then there was a real focus on community organizing. So my father, you know, he was very much into the Catholic faith. So he was organizing with Father Cunningham for the Focus Hope. So at that time, Oakland was just tore up. And so I remember him in the early days, them like him and Cunningham and others like talking about the idea of Focus Hope and the skills trade development and the advanced technology, you know, skills
and I'm
trade
guessing
stuff.
Through your grandfather, he saw also kind of some of the access of what engineering could be.
Yeah. What engineering could be, and more so, it's ironic. My dad was he was a civil rights representative, so he would just go around and sniff out where white folks wasn't right and bust them open. And so what he shared with my grandfather was just this real strong sense of justice and doing the right thing.
So I want you to also speak about this too, because Father Cunningham and Focus Hope are such like anchors in this community. I never had a relationship with Father Cunningham, but Eleanor Jositis was like one of my big homies. Rest in peace. Yeah. And like I say, I don't how she took me under her wing. That's a question.
She was something else.
I don't know, but the relationship with not just we've talked a little bit about parochial schools in Black Detroit, but like even the relationship with the Catholic Church in Black Detroit is a little bit different when we think 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Yeah.
So that 60s, 70s, and 80s when you get that white flight that is massive.
Yeah.
Some of the institutions that stayed developed different relationships with Black folks. Just whether it be Marygrove College, whether it be UAD, but definitely what happened with the church here.
Yeah.
And what Father Cunningham did, because it just would be a different relationship. And in other spaces too, where you'll see some of the most like pro-Black people walking in the Catholic Church, and it sometimes throws people's minds off.
It was always
like what you know what I'm saying? Like, man, they walking in with red, black, and green and arrows, and they walking in the Catholic Church. Like, what's going on? It happens in Detroit.
Yeah, it does. My family was close with Father Cunningham. Him and my grandfather would get drunk quite often. You know what I mean? And Father Cunningham, he aligned with the IRA. He was an Irishman, so he was definitely a revolutionary. He was like, so my grandfather having a lot of nationalists and just worldviews of liberation, they would sit and kept heavy revolutionary science, so that's what was irony too, because in my exposure, a lot of like concepts of justice I got from there, as ironic as it seems. Like I remember being in church when Father Cunningham was like, "Yeah, we taking all these white images down. This is not true. Like, no, there should be no white face in here. What is white Jesus doing in here? Like, you know what I mean?" And it was just like this white Irish cat, like,
Yeah,
tearing down all the images.
and also let me say this also, like, it's a couple different compliments I really keep, but one of them was Eleanor would say, "You think a lot like Father," because they say like he had these very grandiose creative ideas that many people would be like, that ain't gonna happen, but then sometimes eventually people would help and come along the way. So post the rebellion in Detroit in 1967, I think you have two big realities that fall in place that build the foundation of a lot of the future of what I think founds a lot of this strong legacy Black Detroit that was already building, like those Miller High kids and all of that stuff. But what happens is in 67, just due to the world and what's happening, it's still a grand scheme in this hard Cold War, meaning like America is fighting Russia. The more things change, the more they stay the goddamn same.
Yep.
America's fighting Russia covertly, hence the Cold War. And the thought process is, okay, we went through World War I and World War II, and the place that armed our nation as the military industrial concept and the military industrial complex comes to life in industry is Detroit. So like basically Detroit pivoted to like creating massive amounts of bullets, guns, tanks, and even all the other stuff. Like, you know, everything is happening here.
Yeah, it wasn't just Rosie the River, it was Keisha the River there.
So like as that's happening, you then see Detroit on fire during a time where it's like, damn, we still could be at war with quote unquote Russia. We got to pour in to make sure that this gets solved. So if you follow the trend of the foundation of a lot of these strong nonprofits, they're starting like Focus Hope in and around 67. Now, Father Cunningham and a lot of those organizers were already doing the work, but now instead of just talking and doing the work, you're getting a lot of funding. Back to, I'm going to bring you back to COVID-19. There's a lot of Black folks doing stuff before COVID-19, but the minute that white folks saw George Floyd die and they was home, it was like, let's give some Black people some money. So you saw a lot of these organizations that couldn't get $2 before, even some of the work that I was doing. I was surprised the amount of money just through my Cash App campaign a lot of studio got. I want to say we got like $9,500, and shout out to everybody that gave. Where now I'm doing a collard green cook off. I'm like, hey man, can you give $50? People be like, man, get on my face with that. You know what I'm saying? So and it is what it is, but it was a wave that started things. So Focus Hope's key thing in the beginning, back to like food insecurity, was it was so much bad food being sold in these communities, specifically a lot of bad meat and bad vegetables. Father Cunningham and many others were speaking about this for forever. So it's like, we need good food to go to people. And this is the foundational, but it continues to grow as like I say, the grandiose ideas. We need ways to train people in community, because you know that they're not letting these Black men in colleges, so that they can move beyond just being on the line, but they can move into better positions, even if they choose to be line workers within these factories and these industries. Let's get direct relationships with the big three to the point where Focus Hope becomes a multi-billion-dollar nonprofit organization down the street from me and Moudou. But as the organization grows, and I'm sure that a lot of people are going to say this is provocative as I say, some of the disconnect, I think, to the actual community starts to exist. As it's so many people with $1 billion institution down the street that don't even consider walking in the doors of that institution. Because it's almost here, but we don't feel like it's part of the community as much as when a Father Cunningham.
When we were doing 16-mile walks for justice, you know what I'm saying? And so that's, so now the walk of justice is something else, you know. So, I mean, but this is the natural
progression of where things go. Because, I mean, I want to say 2 years ago was the first time, I guess, they weren't in a deficit in years. And this is part of the other design of America. I think under Black leadership, you're going to get resourced differently than under white leadership. And then even the foundation, to me, one of my key critiques is, and I've done a lot of stuff people know, I've done events with Focus Hope. It's in my neighborhood and stuff. I think the design of the institution functions more from the idea and the lens of working in the corporate models of the big three than
Yeah.
it does functioning within community and grassroots, like how it originally started.
Yeah, and I see that as a natural trend of. I mean, I work with a lot of nonprofits, and it tends to happen. You know, you start with the core of dedicated individuals, dedicated supporters, those individuals that share the understanding, those who had a means to support it, and then there's a dilution of that, and so that was one of the things that was key to the Focus Hope discussion, because they were like, okay, we have this nonprofit, now we need contracts, because you move from that nonprofit to being self-sustaining, so you're not dependent on that grant model. But that's a whole nother discussion.
But in the grand scheme, but I like that we're going there because it also shows and ties the idea. So when people look at this Catholic institution in our community, but now it just comes on to new iterations, like what Jason is doing over there with the union that's like right next to the church now. And I don't know how many people know Dr. Jason Wilson of, what is it, Real Men Cry or Black Men Cry, but I know him as, you know, Maestro from Chaos and Maestro, you know, right. But, you know, the hip hop group that's foundational to Pan-African thinking, revolutionary thinking. And also amazing beats and stuff, you know what I'm saying? So this is the sauce that makes Detroit so different, that all of this can kind of be happening simultaneously. Also, another thing, Malcolm X's brother was foundational, I know, in the start of some of the organizing of Focus Hope as well. So you're like, damn, how did Malcolm X's brother and Father Cunningham, it happens in Detroit. Detroit is
This hood had a lot of like revolutionaries. We know Elijah grew up right there on Pilgrim. You know, Malcolm's family grew up when walking distance. Well, his sister was here, brother was here within walking distance. You know, so this is what's about our region, which I'm proud of, man. We've always produced a stream of like radical visionaries, man. You know,
most definitely.
Yeah.
So now we get into more of your story. Where do you go to school? What's your path? You coming up, cutting your teeth here, other like as you grow, like high school.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, my father being, you know, an adherent and a believer in, so I ended up going to Jesu. Which was an interesting thing, because coming up in the hood, everybody like, y'all rich, like no. So I mean, it was real times when it was like, okay, we either gonna have the phone or we paying tuition, and so tuition came first. So early on, I got a real hardcore orientation. It's like education is like right under food and shelter. You know what I'm saying? And so we would it was a lot of sacrifice materially and financially just to make sure we went there. And I never understood, but my pops and my mother would always emphasize, yo, this is super important. And I didn't understand what education was at the time. And so what I began, and my household was always justice oriented. You know, like, so my father, he was a civil rights rep, you know, working for the state, you know, and then my mother, she worked for GM as a union spy, believe it or not. Wow. So she worked at the high executive levels, you know, as an administrator and an administrative assistant. But it's funny, she was good at shorthand, so she would take double notes in shorthand and pass it down the factory line so the boys would be ready when the.
Okay, I want you to explain what shorthand is, because I know anybody under the age of 35 is like, what
right. Shorthand is a system of writing in which it was almost like a hieroglyphic system of writing in which you could certain symbols indicated certain phrases. And so my mother was really good at it. So while she was in these high-level executive meetings and they're talking about slashing workers' jobs and stuff, she would take notes in this other form that most people couldn't understand. It was called shorthand. And so she would take notes in shorthand and then pass it down the line to help, you know, the unions organize. So I was always, like, my household was always about, you know, radicalism, pushing for racial human justice liberation. So when I went to Jesu, you know, that was, believe it or not, irony, that was a theme. It was the Jesuit school, so it was all like, you know, so by fourth grade, man, I had a best buddy in El Salvador, talking with him through pen pal about the El Salvador, revolutionary pull, and then he became a refugee, came up to Jesu, we became homies. So it was just this interesting thing, man, where I was like getting this really very deep education about the humanities, about liberation, about education in general, and so I just stayed active. My pops would have me walking a March for Justice. He was a heavyweight guy. He was like a football coach, Boy Scout leader. So that's where I got my orientation with survival skills, how to tie a knot, how to survive in the woods, all of that stuff. Because I was always with him while he's training up Eagle Scouts, Boy Scouts, or whatnot. Combined with my exposure to the farm, So a lot of the stuff started culminating, and so by the time I graduated Jesu, I had a pretty very complex worldview. So I went on to my parents. They didn't have much faith in in the public school system. So they was like, "You're going to Benedictine." Not that they believed in that system, but they believed at the very least, you're going to be literate. You're going to have these skill sets without the influence of what they felt was like governmental mandates. And so,
and as I say, the parochial school system in Detroit is a different lens.
Different. It's a different
influence of Black folks being there.
Yeah.
And so many, you'd be surprised. Like I tell people, most of those sitting judges in 36th District Court were guys that went to UAD or you know what I'm saying? That relationship and then that arc. So some of it is also the and I want you to speak on this as we definitely get back to the African centered discussion, because this already going to be a longer interview than usual. But some of it's also the way that the families can resource and pour into the school.
Yes.
It's not necessarily like this is quote unquote like these are people we're disregarding, but that consciousness of where the parents' perspective towards what this process is, it brings about a different it brings about a whole different culture within the school itself.
Yeah. I mean, it was deep. I mean, I remember, understanding Reagan policies in 5th grade. Like I say, understanding El Salvador and what NAFTA spelled for people. I understood what was going on in Ethiopia and, the famines going on. And this was because in these schools, they were purposely exposing you to stuff that, was considered. Some places would be like, they're too young to be exposed. They was like, no, you need to see human suffering. You need to see, and so it gave me a good orientation. So when I went to Benedictine, but by the time I got to high school, I started identifying with my own cultural worldview. But once again, Black parochial schools in Detroit was different. So it reinforced notions of, we're mission oriented. We're working to create a system that's better than the one that exists. You have a role to play. Find your place, soldier, and get to it. And so that was the overarching theme of the household and of my education generally.
Now, this is like I say, you got me by a couple, but I don't know what year you're graduating, but what year you graduating starting? What is this, like early 80s or like mid 80s, I'm thinking?
Oh, right? No, not that old, bro. So I graduated in 90 from elementary.
You graduated in 90. Okay, so we about same age. Okay, while this is still happening, then, okay. And I guess that because I know you always was teaching. That's why you look, you can say whatever. So while this is also happening, you living in this duality of in the hood, the streets is coming alive. You know what I'm saying? So if we the same age, I usually give this example. Like we stayed, my dad had this government contract for a while. So for a couple months we stayed in DC in 89. Well, I think that's 89. Whenever Quincy Jones dropped the Back on the Block album.
Okay. Oh yeah.
So then we're in DC and like all these people are coming up to us asking for change. And I'm like, yo, DC is crazy.
Yeah.
We come back to Detroit. I'm like, damn.
Yeah.
See that happened to Detroit. And it's like it was there, but you just not paying attention until you step away and then you come back. Yeah. But the streets is like that, like late, that late 80s, early 90s.
Man,
it's coming alive. So how are you navigating?
Man. That's a beautiful question, bro. Because man. So that's one of the reasons I'm glad to be here, because you can understand some of the regional influences. So, like with all of these notions of liberatory justice, there still was real poverty around this boy. So
Yes.
people don't know, like, you go to Catholic school, that means it's extra tight at the crib. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, so because of that, the 90s hit. And so I'm literally, got my friends who riding up to me like, yo, take this 1,000, bro. Where you get this from? I got plenty. Just literally 15-year-olds riding up on mopeds.
Like, here go a classic one. Do you remember your first friend that had a beeper? I know I do.
Yeah. It was like, beep, beep, beep,
Damn, I got a beeper.
And at this time, you thinking, 14, 15, you thinking that's old, So you see your homie come up bouncing on his elite 350, pull out his 1,000. Yo, here you go, bro. Let's go to Ponderosa and Ogles and Northland. You know what I'm saying? So you're like, what? This is the life. So, and it was very seductive. So unfortunately, like, you look back and you see lines coming out my homie's garage, like down the alley, and you seeing people that you grew up with, like this Miss Perkins, that's Mr. Johnson. And these aren't what we consider crackheads. These are lawyers, teachers, counselors, police officers, So, you got sucked into that. And they was just like, just stand here, hand this to somebody, like just here, And so, a lot of my childhood friends, I won't say I was completely innocent, but a lot of the people that our whole team had got engaged in that shit. And my brother had really got into it because we grew up, it's like now you have all these families of young brothers who had fathers, who had grandfathers, post-World War II, economically tight, but had the discipline and the drive, and you put crack in their head, well, you got a crew. That's just you got a crew,
And let me color it like this too, and this goes back to like more of the science of America. So some of my favorite classes in college were anthropology and sociology, human anthropology, and things like that, just because it's more the design and how people function through the culture of things. So I'm one to say, I've yet to meet many black men that were, I would say, if you were 16 between 1982 and about like maybe 1996, the probability of you selling crack, and I mean, I'm talking about the ones I know that's lawyers, judges, doctors, whatever. Is very high. Even to people that like you, I just never would think like, for a second, get out the mud, be in the game for a second, because it was so prevalent. The same way, like when I say this about a lot of sisters, it's like she was 20 between 2005 and 2015. The chances of her finding herself stripping is extremely high, just because it was so abundant. And so it's like, these realities that exist that you see as like a short-term fix, especially when you're younger, like the idea of patience and resilience and like, okay, I can just wait 15 years and then I'll get it. And then you see like a person, because this is what it would usually be, you see a person that you're like, okay, I know I'm smarter than him. I know I can make better moves than him. And like you say, he pull up with a pager. And he pull up with, a Brooklyn is what we would call it. So like a Brooklyn would be like a wad of money that is more than $1,000. He come out with 4 Brooklyns and you like, damn. And it's like, yo, he got 4 Brooklyns. And then the word starts permeating throughout the community. And it's like,
and it's,
oh man.
And it's on.
And it's like, damn, he ain't play pickup basketball with us no more. Jordans, man. You know what I'm saying? Let me get you some Jordans, dog. For your next game. And it's like, and like you say, no real reason to spend the money other than to go to Ponderosa and blow a lot of the money at Northland or anything. You don't have a cause for this.
You didn't have a cause.
But this is like, oh shit.
And if you layered that, and then you had groups like my team, we had a backward sense of nationalism, a black nationalism. So our thing was, we riding against the system. So the pigs is the enemy, they're the ops, and in our twisted worldview, we were securing our community. We were keeping out the bad people. People are gonna sell dope. Well, we might as well control it in our community, and we're gonna make sure nobody get robbed and raped. And so we had this kind of Black Robin Hood mentality, and it got big. You know, like my brother and some of the groups. You know, we got part of a group called the Ziploc Crew. You know, and that was back in the early '80s. That's back when they used to put stuff in glass vials. Well, my crew was the first ones to use this Ziploc bags. So the feds called us the Ziploc Crew. And it was a thing. You know, it was, they got busted for $100 million. It was back in the YBI days. It was crazy.
So so the connections go back to the early mid 80s.
Yeah.
But you're just seeing some of this even through the lens of your brother and his homies too, and then just looking and seeing what's happening in community.
Yeah. And then, you know, as you would have it, I was talented at basketball. I could rap. And, so I got pulled into it. And so luckily, I maintained my education and I knew how to carry myself. So I was blessed. I dealt with like a lot of survivor's guilt because out of 30 of us, like 28 of my homies ended up doing 20 plus years. You know what I'm saying?
And let me say, when you talk about getting pulled into it, like kind of like how people talk about gangs, like, and they're like, why would you do something so stupid? Why would you do something so stupid? These was the people you play, you know what I'm saying? Tag with.
Yeah.
You rode bicycles with, you knew some of their family's conditions where it's like, you know how poor their family is.
Exactly.
And so it's like, you're not looking at it from the lens like the after school show where they turn on TV and it's like some like 45-year-old gangster that walk up to you and say, hey, I want you to sell drugs.
Yeah, here, try these drugs, kid. No, it was never that.
Never that. It was I know him. It seemed like he navigating this well.
Yeah.
I probably can.
And it was generational too. You know, at a certain point, it was like, you know, we're smart enough not to do dope, you know. And so then it became, I was a good basketball player. You know, we had a neighborhood, so I'd be hooping. And so all the OGs would be hustling at the basketball court. And the next thing you know, they like, yo, I'm going to bet on Lil J. I put 100 on him. And so then they would take me to other hoods to compete with other people on one-on-one. And I was making money, making good money. Because of that, I knew all the crackheads. I knew all the fiends. I knew all the hustlers, you know. So then it was just like a natural thing. And then
you just set up introductions to play.
Yeah.
I ain't even really doing nothing. You said, hey, you know somebody? And it's like, let me call
or real things happen. Like I remember like our lights getting cut off. You know what I mean? And it being tight at the crib. And then my OG homie calling one of the crackhead, basehead customers that knew the DTE, climbed that line, boop, hooked it up. I was like, yo, this community resources. Heat got threatened, had another one, boop, got that heat, cable, cars, and then we was like, oh, this is a real resource. You know, we start seeing these individuals not like, oh, that's crackhead. No, this is a skilled engineer who happens to smoke crack. And
I like that you said that because my favorite art form, hip hop, and the older I get, much as I love it, I gotta admit that it's definitely been more detrimental, I think, from the lens, especially of young brothers, than constructive. Though I love hip hop, but I can't even argue it anymore at this point where I'm at in consciousness to say this has been more detrimental because even the lens of that, because that's the part of the game that's never really leaned into, that the resource that the person that used was for people that I knew in the game, meaning like. And that's why I like The Wire so much and Bubbles' character, because the user was the advertisement for anybody that was like, they were your gateway. They knew about the functionality of things. And then also, as they call them, like functional fiends, it was so many people where it wasn't everyone being broke down and destitute. And even the person that was broke down and destitute, when I think about a lot of the people in my family and friends and extended family, like they would, you know, it still was a level of character where they could sleep in your house and they wasn't going to steal nothing. You would almost leave. They would go out of their way to say, hey, leave the money right there on the table and I ain't going to touch nothing.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, if you treat me like I ain't shit, if you treat me with disrespect, then guess what?
Yeah.
I'm going to look at you because you see me as nothing. I'm going to be a predator towards you. And I'm not saying everybody function on that, but it's still a level of character, resilience, and values and virtues that existed instead of like where I think hip hop played it from okay, I'm not gonna do drugs, but these people that do drugs ain't shit and blah blah
Yeah,
blah
I'm
blah.
a
And
dog
that's
them
just
out.
not the reality that I ever saw in my community.
Me neither.
From how I've seen the story told, and a lot of times, it just doesn't paint the real life picture
Exactly.
of what I've seen and how we all function within one another, and we don't want to see anyone get taken advantage of. And even how you said, like, hey, we're gonna be like Robin Hood, that's been the theory of many, and it's been some Robin Hood like acts many times where I'm gonna straight up tell you, like, a lot of the gangsters I know, worst case scenario, that's gonna be the only place that if I really needed a line of credit, I ain't getting it from no damn bank with what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
Let me just be 1,000 with you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
You know, we would make sure these babies got to school, these elders were straight. It wasn't no, you know, and that's what I guess was most seductive, because then as a black person who's traditionally disenfranchised, lack of access, so yeah, I can get access to electricity, or I can get somebody that can fix the furnace. Or I remember in high school, I got tutored through high school by a basehead who was extremely brilliant in math. And so
that's the other layer of some of the money you just gave a large figure, but some of the money is not, I think, everything that the rappers portray, but the network of resources just due to the underworld is. But you could be in the right barbershop, especially like early 90s. You may get, I mean, obviously, I don't know, you know, if it fell off a truck or nothing, but you could walk away with, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, exactly what LL Cool J just wore in the same video.
Exactly.
If you happen to be in the barbershop at the right time for about $25.
I knew something you could put an order in. Like, yo, I need a velour size so and so, and they'd be like, we'll be right back, and they'll bring it to you. You know, so it was this weird respect factor you had with these people, because you knew that they weren't just like drug addicts. They were brilliant people, really skilled people. And so that was part of the allure that kept you kind of into it, because you didn't feel like you were victimizing anybody. You're like, oh man, that's Eric. You know, he just liked to get high, but he the baddest electrical engineer I know. You know, it wasn't, you know, I'm destroying this man's life. It's like, no, Eric liked to get high, but he's the baddest, you know. And so it was seductive like that. But anyway, it was a massive indictment that came.
And wait, I do have to put this into framework too.
Yeah.
And also, and that's what I liked about the show Snowfall. I always bring this up when we talk about crack, because it frames it from the right. Like, cocaine in the 70s was opulence. It was fun. It was champagne. It was like, this is what the stars do, right?
Right.
And now you end up with crack, like a cheap, like the poor man's version, because freebasing, it's like, man, that looked like chemistry or something. I ain't really with that.
Right.
Whereas a lot of folks were smoking, as they know, like a 51, meaning like crack cocaine and weed, and I don't mind smoking, but this whole thing where you gotta base it and put it on,
all of that,
a lot that didn't really. Some
rig.
people did, and then especially when Richard Pryor burned himself up, it's like, I ain't trying to do that crazy shit. So the framework of how crack was, I think, functioned better culturally, connecting to our people. And then you now learn about like Oliver North and everything that was happening and the way the government conspired, the same way that I think that what happened with Afghanistan, and you have this opioid crisis and conspired in many white communities to run concurrent with putting that into pill form, which fits their community. But this is a Akari theory.
I eat fentanyl now, right?
Like, so it's like, so you couple that, where now you have the prevalence of the drug here from a country we're quote unquote factioning in war with, and then you introduce this crime bill, which it sounds like the age of your brothers and that whole Ziploc crew fits right there. So before then, you're a kid, 94. You may face, you know, I don't know, 2, 3, possibly 5 years. That changed things to exorbitant sentences.
Exorbitant, you know. And one thing about our, you know, when stuff started getting hot, they were upset because, like, the oldest member of our crew was 26, and everybody else was like very young. So a lot of our people were under that sentencing age
at the time.
But when that 94 crime bill came, that's when did the they started the indictment thing came,
And more RICO charges.
and more RICO, yeah, and that's when things got real. So they started, delivering the papers, and unfortunately, in this melee, my brother didn't make it. He got killed. He was like, he played the role of enforcer. So that's a short life.
How did your parents and family grapple with this? Because I'm guessing by then they kind of already were knowing the life and the risk.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, obviously, I mean, the intellect of you and what you all did. I mean, he probably had his own argument from a younger age.
Yeah.
Rest in peace. But how did that impact your parents?
Well, it was unfortunate. Well, unfortunate was, I don't know how to put it, but we knew how to carry ourselves. So we wasn't coming in with your chilling minks and stuff like that. So mind you, my brother was at school on a full ride scholarship, pre-med,
Wow.
3.3. So he's handling his business, coming home, hitting the streets at night. So my parents had no clue.
They didn't even know.
They had no clue.
Wow.
And so when it went down, and then they go to the police, and they're like, well, we can't tell you anything. They say, why? Because it's a major federal investigation. They're like, what you mean federal? Yeah, your son was being investigated under the RICO Act, and we were planning to indict him, and so they're like, what? And so then when they start seeing the volume, because at the time, the crew we had spots from here to Alabama, 70 of them,
So I'm guessing at that point they immediately come.
Yeah, they like
you.
Yeah.
So basically your parents' response had a whole lot to do with your response.
Yeah, so they're looking at me, and I was, let's just say, I was seduced by it, but I was smart enough not to be a crash test dummy. Yeah. So my role was more of like a consigliere. I would interact with like the higher ups strictly as an advisor, and so when the heat came, they look on paper, oh, he got a job, he's in school, so I avoided a lot of that. And so when my parents came to me, I had to explain to them everything that was going on.
How just on the emotional level, what was, first off, so it's two levels, since you're the one explaining it, how did you deal with that?
I just went numb, because immediately, when it happened, my parents, it was such a blind side that my mother just immediately stopped working and fell into alcoholism. She just could not believe, you know what I'm saying? They split up, and so I become numb, and so my whole thing was I didn't really have a space to deal with it because I'm dealing with these shell shocked parents, and so
and you still not even necessarily addressing the grief yourself.
Right, because now remember, not mind you, my brother. Not only that, but then everybody, all my buddies are gone. My brothers from
your blood brother, but also your brothers.
Yeah. So now you take late 90s Detroit, quote unquote, your crew is gone. It's crazy out here. So your sense of insecurity. Anyway, I don't know how I dealt with it, but I definitely had to explain to my parents, and then people that they had grew up with that were in the street, some of them crackheads, was like, yeah, your brother was,
your son was,
your son was, your son, we were scared of him. He was, and they like, no, not my, like,
So this probably in your mom, and this is another thing about, I guess they say like, how do you deal with grief, and I guess getting blindsided with grief could be even more powerful.
Yeah. And so, it was blindsided. So I had a choice, of course, I had interests still out there that were like, yo, man,
we
but
down.
I'm like, nah, man, I cannot. I'm looking at these.
Point.
Yeah, they too blown. How do I look going out here doing some crazy, And so because I maintain myself, boom, I'm going to HBCU. I'm out of here. I got to leave, like we taught to do. Man, I get a letter in the mail from UD. Congratulations. We've selected you for a full ride scholarship to UD. So I'm like, damn, I can't get out of here.
Basically down the street.
Yeah, but this is gravy because we didn't have money. I was just going to loan my way out through HBCU. So now I get a full ride down the street. So it's bittersweet. I get a full ride education, but I'm still walking through the hood. I'm still in the hood. So now I had to figure out, like, how do I navigate this with leaving that old life alone. And mind you, while this was going on, I know that because we live complex lives, I'm still heavy in the movement. So I'm not just dope boy, no, I'm organizing. I'm in number one. I'm at Muhammad's Mosque on Hamilton. I'm still out here in these streets, as crazy as it sounds, registering voters. But, had these little run-ins on the side. And so when that died, that's when I just really woke up politically, spiritually, socially, realized like, yo, yeah, man, I've been working against my own principles. You know what I'm saying?
So you start challenging the thought process of like, really, this is what hip hop gave us. The thought of like, okay, we can do this in our own way, taking some of these tools and making it for us. But now you start really having that existential question of, I got to clean my shit up.
I got to clean my shit up. Because, because it's tight financially, and this is something that relates to our liberation struggle. This is what I learned is that if we had a liberation struggle that's based on poverty, baby, we're going to turn out a whole lot of dope dealers. You know what I mean? And that's something that is important to me because as I became more engaged in the liberation struggle, the focus on liberation concepts was profound, but the concept of economic stability, of making sure them babies ate, making sure it stayed with, that was left off the table. That was like, oh, brother, we don't need money. And so it kind of triggered me because I'm like, wait a minute, that's the shit that had me and mine running in these streets, even though we were instilled with love, trust, community, justice. You know what I'm saying? So that was something that always played in my mind. So as I went through school, began organizing, became president of the Black Student Association. I just got out here and started getting other brothers and sisters, pulling them in, getting them scholarships, trying to get them in position. And we started organizing the Black Student Union and, just going hard.
UAD.
Yeah, UAD.
So I got to stop there because UAD is one of those institutions. It's interesting. So as much as we talk about the parochial high schools, and I think Marygrove played a different role, UAD has always been one of those institutions, kind of like what's become of others. Like it's in the community, but it don't really feel like it's in the community. You know what I'm saying?
It's not, man.
And especially when, you know what I'm saying? Because you see it, it's always been there.
Yeah.
But it almost seems like keep driving past, even the way the gates are up.
Yeah, man.
The way you can enter in.
Yeah.
What was it like organizing Black folks on that campus to feel like, hey,
it was crazy. So the scholarship I got was McNichols Puritan Linwood Community Council. And that was created in 72 when the U of D decided to cut off Dexter. And that goes back in some Detroit history. U of D decided to expand they decided to expand their campus and cut the Dexter off. So if you go down Dexter, it stops at U of D. People used to be able to catch buses through the middle of the campus. But the elites, the rich people at U of D was like, we don't want the commoners coming through our campus. And so some wealthy donor donated for them to cut the street off and build a gate around the campus. And so my Aunt May, and other people in this area began to organize like, nah, man, you're not going to be in our community to cut the streets off. Hell no. And they gave them holy hell. But I don't know how the city sold out, let them get a city street, but they did it. And, but the elders, they pressured them enough to be like, look, man, you got to give it up. So U of D say, all right, we're going to give up 4 full-ride scholarships a year. We're going to build, most of which memorandum of understanding they have not honored, which we still on their butts about honoring, but that's a whole nother discussion. 4 full-ride scholarships a year, computer technology course or resource in the community, access to the community for the youth during the summer, expanded patrols of UD police to secure the citizens. There were like 10 other bullet points that was demanded of them. So I'm coming in on the backs of them. Remember, I was hustling but I'm still out in these streets. So right there on Puritan and Normandy, that park, I helped found that. I was cutting the grass. I helped cut, I'm out here. So not only am I known by the streets, I'm known by the OG activists. So when I come to UD, they know like, nah, bro, I got a whole community behind me. You know what I'm saying? And so I started organizing immediately with the Black Student Association. And yeah, organizing Black people in elite, wealthy campus. That's when I started understanding ideas of classism. Understanding, there's another class of Black folk who don't even understand or care what's going on. So that was interesting.
And they're and see, this is the other thing. They're in Detroit.
They're in Detroit.
You went to J-Zoo, so some rich Black folks, but they still, you know what I'm saying? They bumping pockets as much as I am. It's a group of rich Black folks.
These different Black folk right here. You know what I'm saying? And so it was interesting because this is the first time I'm seeing people like get angry about concepts of like, yo, Million Man March, I don't want to hear that. I'm like, whoa. And so it gave me an education, political education, because our first orientation as Black Student Association, we was like school days. I swear to God, like if you watch School Days, that was my experience at UD. We were going hard. I was, like the Greeks, we was literally going to war, like fighting with them. And it was crazy. And so I got a lot of class understanding class in relation to liberation theology.
Did you stay on campus?
No, I didn't. No.
Okay.
And so
you still stayed at the crib.
Yeah, which was a challenge.
I mean, it's right there.
It's right there. Yeah. So I'm walking home, hitting the L, shooting some dice, going to struggle study chemistry and shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was
up to Corn Man. I need to get Corn Man on here too. But.
Yeah, that's my guy. We went to school together. Forget that's my guy. So
it's a guy. Just so people know, if you around it's a guy named Corn Man, and he does his own like creative signs and everything. And he sells like popcorn, ears of corn,
real good.
It's the most like. Detroit is different shit ever, bro.
Yeah, you gotta get some corn from Corn Man. That's my guy. So we both, believe it or not, went to UD. He went on a academic scholarship. So you had a group of us who were coming from the hood, dealing with these issues of class and race and stuff. And it was a real education. And so we ended up succeeding in starting the African Studies Department. You know what I'm saying? That's still here to this day.
Wow.
We doubled the size of the Black Student Union. You know, we were kicking serious behind. And I didn't realize the implications of political organizing on the college campus. So as I got into it with the Greeks, it was a funny situation. I got called from the dean of schools, and, I'm sitting there like, and this is like my final year. And they're like, man, we've been getting complaints from different student groups. And they're accusing you of being ethnocritical. And I was like, ethnocritical? What does that mean? You know what I'm saying? Well, you seem very critical of the Greek civilization society. I'm like, nah, I'm just telling you where it came from. You know what I'm saying? And man, these groups that organize, and this shows you the power of the Black elite, right? So they organized, and I was I was edited a school paper on the school senate. So I'm clouding up. I'm trying to get all the leverage possible, So they're like, all right, well, if you issue a retraction in the school paper, we'll let it go. And I'm Firebrand. I'm Larry Fishburne. School Days. I ain't doing nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, they took my scholarship.
Wow.
Yeah, so I ended up having to finish the last year and a half just out of pocket. And I didn't realize they took my scholarship to after grad school, and I got $180,000 bill. I'm like, wait a minute, I was on full ride scholarship. They're like, this is a private institution, fool. Guess, try to get it. You know what I'm saying? I went to lawyer after lawyer. They're like, that's a private institution, buddy. You hit.
Wow.
Anyway, so that was the UAD experience. But I learned about the power of the Black elite, the so-called boule, and that they're a real thing, that they really operate.
So it's interesting also within that, because Lord knows, I mean, my mouth ended up in a lot of situations from opening it. But I think in it, it's another level of confidence and resilience. Even I know if you ever cross any of them people, and I mean in handlings where it's like, damn, he did not fold.
Yeah.
Not folding and having that pride in not folding can definitely cost you possibly a lot. But also in the flip side of not folding, sometimes the sometimes what you get from not folding
Man.
can be so empowering for the others that are witnessing the act of not folding.
Yeah. That's a very good. Yeah, not folding, and because you pay a heavy price. Like I tell people, like yeah, and the co-optation. So when they see you moving on the right move, they try to co-opt you. So I remember getting a call from a former mayor, who wasn't in the best interest of the city.
Yeah.
Like, yo, I want you to be my press secretary. I'm like, why you want? I'm part of your recall. I'm part of the recall campaign. Call me back, yo. I want you to be a speech writer for me. And I'm like, why are you trying to co-opt me? So I started getting all these offers from all of these folks on the other side
that are seeing. So
like just
your story kind of somewhat like sometimes my story where like I think it was like an era maybe like 2007 where they was like, oh, that guy
we're gonna buy all this talent.
And, I'll tell you my moment where I think a lot of that stopped. And it's my guy too. We had the NAACP 2007.
Man, I'm sure we were in the room together, brother.
Barack Obama's this is during the before the primary election, where Barack Obama's running against Hillary Clinton, and I mean, like, when I say this, I mean, I like Marja, Donnell, a lot of the other Jessup, like a lot of the other, like right now what you would say like they're like in that path, future leaders, like I mean they baselining at like six figures even if they get caught at a scandal type people. And Hester Wheeler walks in and he's like, what do we know about him? And then I turned and looked at Hester. I was like, it don't matter what we know about him. It's a black man that's about to be president of the United States. So what you trying to say is basically because of your relationship with the Clinton family, you gonna support that? The room got silent.
Burn the bridge. Look at you.
And it was like, oh, we got to get him the fuck up out of here.
Hey, listen, I've been through that, man.
But even now, it's like I'm still interacting. I mean, now I think with stuff like that. Shout out to Hester, another Northwestern coach like me, and in it, I think it's things where we do align all the work he's doing with getting voter registrations and things like that in the work he's doing now. Certain things we align on, certain things we gonna be on the other side of the room.
Like the streets say, it's levels to this shit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so that's why I had to learn to like respect people for whatever they doing on whatever level, even if it's like, I don't know, I try not to be critical of anybody that's pushing toward the betterment. You know what I mean?
And I agree with you. Like, it's another group and a couple of brothers that's like, oh, that guy that I think have something against some of the stuff that I'm doing in my approach. And I can definitely say I may be a strong cup of tea from time to time.
Yeah.
But I do believe if you're in my community and you're working towards something that's constructive, I'm going to be in this space.
Yeah.
So we're going to cross paths.
Yeah.
And I would rather be in this space where we cross paths and I want you to know my door is open and Detroit is different, is open for whatever you're doing constructively. If your opinion of me is your opinion of me and whatever it is, that's cool. But this still is a platform for the people in the community. Because I want to create the model that, like, look, we could disagree, but you still need that platform because I don't think black voice is being platformed the way that it needs to be platformed. Hence, Detroit is different exists.
True that. Yeah. So, and that's a maturity, right? Because you go through that phase of like, yo, we're going to expose the boule. We're going to expose these Negroes. And,
that's their comfort zone.
That's their comfort zone.
They think works.
Yeah.
I agree with it. But furthermore,
just don't work against our moves. That's all I say.
Boule is going to come to me sooner than I'm going to go to them.
Exactly.
Because clearly they ain't coming to my community.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
The only pushback I get is when they try to block, but certain, but you learn to deal with those different strata of blackness, the elites, the elites, all the way down to, my brothers out here still on the block dealing with their deal. You know what I'm saying?
I think that it's easier to me, at least. I think it's easier to interact with the people in my community because culturally I connect with them differently.
Yeah.
I'm more of it. I mean, like I always say, like when people say, no, you're not square, I'm square comparable to the people that I feel like ain't square. So the person that I think ain't square is probably the type of person that even in meeting you ain't meeting you in the first place. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They don't shake hands. They not even gonna look at you. They damn near gonna need to observe you for like 5 or 6 meetings where you thinking, what's wrong with him?
Yeah.
And it's like that's the guy I think that ain't square. That's the people I don't want to say I'm more comfortable around, but I've been assimilated to, hence understanding more in sociology.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like even to this day, I remember you gonna laugh at this because you in the same type of community.
Mm-hmm.
It was a group from the Bog Center of like some kids from Minnesota, but they chose white vans to come over here. So
man.
They came with 3 white vans, right? I got phone calls from like 25 people on my block, like, yo, what the fuck going on?
Yo, them alphabet boys, yo, what's going on?
You know, and like this is like the cultural duality of me. Like,
yeah.
Where you gotta sometimes tell that group, it's like, look, when you rent a vehicle,
yeah.
Don't get a white van if you plan on coming over here.
Yeah.
And that don't mean that people gonna come outside like with AKs, like it's you know, like it's McGraw Ave or anything. It just means it's like
you may not get the welcoming committee.
Yes.
Yeah. So cultural understanding is like that, man. And that's just part of the saga. And so that segue, you know, my organizing in UAD, I ran into one of my elder OGs, Owusu. I give shout out and give honor to him. Yeah. Rest in peace. And I was poet, dancer, just straight up revolutionary.
Powerful dude. He always be like,
I'm on campus.
Get out here.
Yeah. That's my guy. He gave me like confidence as a young revolutionary because I was on campus, man. I see this cat with locks, and this UAD is square as fuck. You know, excuse my language, but I see this cat with locks sitting at the campus just blazing a spliff. I'm like, yo! Then he look at me. He walk up to me. He say, yo, what's up, man? I say, nothing. And we talking. He say, yeah, what's your name? I tell him my name. He say, yeah. He just give me his address. I need you at this house tonight. Wow. I was like, bet. So I showed up at the house. This was in Highland Park, McLean.
Okay. Who was there?
Him and Ivy.
Okay.
Yeah. So I show up, man, and yo, man, it's just different. I'm seeing the arts on the wall. My man blazing the spliff. I'm hearing Peter Tosh. I'm like,
and his wife just connected.
Yeah, I'm like, yo, I'm already have an understanding of revolutionary. You know what I'm saying? So I'm feeling at home. Like,
yeah,
who is this cat? And he coming to me, said, yeah, and in 3 months you're gonna do a conference. I said, I'm doing a conference. He said, yeah, it's going to be called the Self-Determination Conference.
Hilarious.
He gave me this number. He said, man, this is Courtney Vance. I said, man, the actor? He said, yeah, and you going to call him right now and ask for $3,000. I said, what? He said, I'm showing you how to organize. Get on the damn phone. I was like, hilarious. What?
So Courtney B. Vance, Courtney B. Vance is in many movies. He's from Detroit. I think my favorite role is probably one he don't like. But in Coming to America, when Eddie Murphy walk out the bathroom and he's like, oh my God, it is you. That's Courtney B. Vance.
Yeah.
Also, I think in probably another role, he's like one of the techs in what is that? Die Hard 2.
Yeah.
He in a lot of stuff.
He in a lot, man.
But yeah, he's from Detroit, so that's interesting. Calling this actor.
Yeah, because he like I'm gonna let you know it's a group. It's a lot of people out here who in this movement. I'm gonna show you how to organize, and the people with money, I'm gonna show you how to. And so that summer, man, I was calling all the luminaries in our black community, trying to get money for the Self-Determination Conference. Then he was like, yo, I mean, he's basically teaching me, man. I honor him for this. And in this conference, just for those people in Detroit to know, this is where I met Malik Yakini, Kwame Kenyatta, Baba Bill from Serengeti, Kalindi. You know what I mean? So
you meeting like the
what
figures?
Yes,
yeah. Bill Foster and all of them have their own interesting, dynamic personalities.
Exactly.
And you meeting them, and also like now entrenching in a different amount of revolutionary struggle of looking at some OGs that at that point, I guess they were probably like.
They're where we are.
Yeah, 40s, 50s. Yeah. They like,
so,
yeah.
And the first thing they did, man, they grilled me like, "Who are you? You know, like, who are your family? Where you from? You know?" And they was like, they was looking for some potential agent. Like, who are you? You know, we did the conference, and then I started working with Baba Kalindi, and then after that, it's a funny thing. Bob Malik came to me. He said, "Hey, young brother," he said, "Yeah, man." He said, "When you graduate, you got somewhere you working?" I was like, "Not yet." He said, "Man, I got an African Center school, man. They may be interested." I was like, "Hell yeah!" So a year and a half later, man, I met in
So that's
Sorma.
your start there in
Yeah.
Sorma. So it was real organic. You weren't even necessarily on the path of teaching, but definitely in community.
In community. So
And the kids
self-determination
took to you there.
conferences.
They loved your class because they was like,
Man.
I'm Moudou. What was your approach dealing with the little homies different than, because this was the other thing happening around that time of you getting in Sorma. Like,
Yeah.
I'm Aisha Shule kid.
Okay, yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
probably in debt. Lord knows at the Shule, I was giving all types of teachers headaches. I think the best one that dealt with me was Mami Imani Wayusi, who was my first grade teacher. At the time, she was wife of Baba Idris, but she used to always tell stories and she do songs. It was like, I felt like she was like my first favorite MC or something. You know what I'm saying? She was better than Rakim. So I connected to that. Other than that, it's like still just the dissonance. But you had like a new student coming in, and some of the OGs at the time, I don't think were being as patient. They were thinking that they could approach the African-centered education system the same way. And this is like the Soulja Boy era where Moudou, some of the teachers was like, I can't. Where Moudou be like, yeah, come here.
Yeah. And that was funny, man, because it was like, you know, we at that age, we hip hop. And so some of our elders in the African-centered movement, they were like, hip hop, you know, that's not African, that's you know. So we, you know, early on we felt a certain isolation, like, man, these people don't really think we down with this movement. They, you know, and so when we started engaging with the youth, that's when I realized, like, okay, well, this is a hip hop generation. And through hip hop, I could teach them ideas of Pan-Africanism, nationalism, culture. And I was able to use that as a medium and connect with them better. And then I had to forgive myself, because when you come in this thing early on real quick, you had this pressure like, yo, I gotta wear a full dashiki every day. You know what I'm saying? Like,
black,
you know, like I can't even, you know what I'm saying? If I ain't, you know, if I can't, you know, so you get this real, like, you know, when you young, man, you go through it, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Like, yeah.
Like, man, I can't go to the movies no more, brother. That ain't African. You know what I'm saying?
I can't go. It's like, brother, why you writing on white paper?
That's right, brother. You know what I'm saying? Yes. What you mean? Good morning, brother. You know, all that shit. So, you go through this real, like, insecurity, man. And but you still at the same time honor where you came from. You honor hip hop. Yeah. So trying to find that middle ground, you know. And so through the process of working with youth, I was able to find a middle ground.
That's dope.
And
then I could see through the youth the connection, because kind of like, even though you're in an instructor capacity like them, you're ushering them through, you still be you.
Yeah.
But our version of African Centered is not going to be theirs, because they got whole different types of experiences that ground them in something. Like, they grew up listening to Roy Ayers.
Yeah.
Grew up listening to Biggie.
Right.
So it's just not.
And
do we like Roy Ayers? Yes.
Right. But
it's a whole different. It's a different.
And that's when you start realizing, like, the nuance between cultural nationalism and black nationalism. Like, oh, well, black nationalists, they just black. They don't feel like they need to have a bird sting and dashiki, but and then you see the value of both philosophies.
Yeah.
You see the contradictions. You see the and so I spent a lot of the early 2000s trying to reconcile those differences.
That's interesting.
You know, like, how can you be a black nationalist but still hold cultural affinity? You know, at the same time, still have, from our generation's contribution, an economic hustle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's something that, I don't know. I think that's one of the spices we brought to the sauce.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
You know, my classic always, and it'll be coming soon too, but my long-lasting debate with Baba Malik about capitalism, it's, you know. It is classic at this point. You know, where now I've even got them. It's like, look, what you talking about is a perverse assimilation of what exists, and it's not even really what exists.
Yeah.
Because this is, and I say it's well, as Youssef will say, white hegemony, but even fuller white supremacy. It's what I speak to all the time in this. The country is designed for white men with property and businesses.
Yeah.
And the further away you get from that, the more this country doesn't function with you.
Yeah.
This is stolen land.
Yeah.
stolen labor and a stolen loan. So even as on this Independence Day, we're saying Independence Day, basically what happened was Great Britain fronted
Exactly.
these vandals and these migrants and these criminals
Right.
the money to quote unquote steal and rape and pillage the natives that were here. And then the minute that the country said, hey, they far enough away and we got enough money from Portugal, France, and Spain, we gonna turn around and we ain't giving Great Britain nothing.
Yeah.
We gonna declare our independence because you know what? We gonna steal what they gave us in the first place. It is still a stolen loan that many people don't
double stolen
under quote unquote our independence.
If this was the streets, you got fronted a brick and you skipped town.
That's exactly.
And then you came back and rolled by on your homie that's fronted
exactly
you the brick in the first place. You know what I mean? Like
you said, hey,
I put you on, and I'm about to ride on your ass.
And that's a big elephant in the room. And then you establish quote unquote a land that's built on the precedent of law legally. Meaning like precedent, meaning like, okay, you can't do this because you have it. But it's like, how do you establish any precedent when it's a stolen land, stolen labor, and a stolen loan? If you give me money that I don't ever have to pay back, land that I don't have nothing to, and labor, and then you give me like a 150-year head start, guess what?
Yeah. And here's
what happens.
And then you come around talking about we about to, and it's the other part of the so-called Civil War they don't like to talk about. Even the American Revolution they don't like to talk about. Because remember, Britain turned around and was like, yeah, and in 5 years we about to outlaw slavery. And Ben Franklin and like, oh, hell no, I want my slaves.
Yes.
I'm taking these. I ain't giving them back.
I like that.
And that Revolutionary War was so much more about slavery than we like to say.
I mean, everything, like really when you look at it, the American Revolutionary War was definitely about that.
Yeah.
World War I is about colonizing of Africa.
Exactly.
World War II is about colonizing of Africa.
Exactly.
It looks like this World War III that we're on the precipice of is about the colonizing of Africa because the way that Russia and China engages in doing business with Africa is so different than the quote unquote
NATO allies.
Yes, I like that you said it like that.
Yeah.
The NATO allies approach of colonizing of Africa by propping up one person and the individualism and this person isn't this person, like the Shah of Iran, and just feeding into one. And I'm not necessarily saying that China and Russia are should be applauded in all of their moves in Africa.
Right.
But from the lens, depending upon the media you watch, and I think that I encourage a lot of brothers to watch more African media and actually media from India that's independent, you'll learn that I believe that their approach is a lot more transactional.
Exactly.
Whereas the American approach is usually like the economic hitman. I urge everyone to at least look at some interviews of it if you don't want to read the book, of the idea of getting overburdened, which has even been done in cities like Detroit and definitely Highland Park, where you'll overburden the city with way much money that they'll never be able to pay back. And then you'll turn around and say, yeah, you still owe us. So let's get your best natural resources and let's appoint these people to lead this.
Yeah.
This has been going on in Africa since. That's the NATO way of doing it.
Yeah.
China and Russia is like, look, y'all need some airports and y'all need some stuff. We'll buy whatever it is.
Yeah.
What happened in Niger last summer around this time was such a bold act to kick out the French from having the control of the uranium that has been there for forever is one of the most bold acts that I've seen.
Yeah,
and the fact that basically that they were there in Niger getting the uranium plants and giving people in Niger 2% on what that is. Russia and China stepped up in the other BRICS nations and said, look, we're going to buy uranium for what it really costs.
Right.
Usually you could put a stronghold on that due to the sanctions of what you want to do and all of that stuff. So like I say, it's not necessarily like this is grandiose freedom, but it's an opportunity.
It's a leverage point. Yeah.
And leverage that you can't. Yeah. Like you say, you got to know it's levels to this shit, as you say. And those are the levels that I think are playing out now. Yeah.
It's the global north, the global south. China and Russia really sees like, oh, the global south about to get busy.
Yeah.
You talking everything south of the equator where 90% of Earth's resources are coming. So they're placing their bets on the global south.
Yeah, even with Venezuela. Like, and when we think about what's happening with Maduro and how long he's been there, but I know we got more geopolitics. So, talk this. So within that, in the healing, which kind of one of the reasons you hear now in this healing journey you're connecting to some real healing, as a lot of the mental paths of you talking about dealing with some of the things of getting that understanding, because there's so many understandings.
Yeah.
But living in this from, I like the way you said it. It's like the cultural blackness and it's like the national blackness. Living within that family, being a brother, being a black man, being in hip hop culture, being in African center culture, dealing with the grief of your brother, seeing this connected to your mother, your father, but also looking at like the scarcity that's an imposed scarcity. One of the key challenges that I always do say that is the perverse detriment of anything capitalism, that it will always have scarcity. That's my key argument against it. And I don't think that scarcity is actually something that exists. I believe it's man-made and instituted so that you can force people to do things that they usually wouldn't do.
Thank
that's
you for saying that,
extremely
my brother.
pervasive in our community.
Thank you.
So you're working with something on healing people.
Yeah.
In an interesting way.
Yeah. Look, man, once I got to a point after because during the storm, I still active. Found new Black Panther Party in the city, heavy organizing Republic of New Africa on the underground tip. Still out here, boom, boom, boom. And so about the year 2000, that's when I was training with Kalindi.
Rest in peace, Baba Kalindi.
Yeah, rest in peace, Baba Kalindi. And that's where I dedicate a lot of this work to, because he kind of saved my life, because he was he had a similar existence to me and you know what I'm saying, in the sense of coming up in the neighborhood. He didn't necessarily go through the parochial thing, but he came up in the streets, you know what I'm saying, and his orientation to blackness came from the streets, and then he grew into appreciation for himself and his people. So me and him connected, and we were training, and we would always talk about, we would look around, man, have all these bad, big black bag men, like 6'1", boom, boom, boom. It was like, well, shit, what? He would ask me, like, what do you think y'all training for? He said, y'all are the prime predator on the earth. Like, if y'all turn the predators, y'all would be the apex. So who are you trying to defend? You trying to defend yourself?
Let me contextualize it.
Yeah.
So Kalindi,
thank you.
master martial artist, respected across the world at the time before his passing. So master martial artist. So he's speaking of the training in the martial arts.
Yeah. So he was just basically explaining, like, it's no use in being a 6-foot black man, 200 plus pounds, lifting weights, thinking that you got to prepare for the bully or getting robbed at the bus stop. It may happen, but our job is to prepare for the elders, the babies, the youngsters, our ladies. Our job to train to be a protector and defender. And I align with that. But then he said, on a deeper level, he said, we're fighting a deeper level, a deeper fight. And Baba, he did some serious work in this movement, like serious work that probably can't even be spoke about. So I'm like, what do you mean, Baba? Because at the time, the elders at the BLA, they advised me to train with him. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, look, there's an enemy, there's an unseen enemy that we fight. He said, by the time it gets down to like guns and protests, he said, that's reaction. He said, I'm gonna teach you the science of reactionary versus proactionary organizing. I'm like, damn. He said, most of what we do is react. Police kill our brother, we react. Store seal food, we react. He said, I'm going to show you the science of proaction. And so as we did that, he introduced me to the plant of entheogens, or sacred plants, in particular the sacred mushroom. And so as I began to study that, I sat with him for a year, learning how to cultivate. He had me come over, constantly had me reading. And then once I had my first experience, man, it was like, I understood for the first time what that meant by that Bible statement. Is like, we fight not against flesh and bone, but against principalities. You know what I mean? And when I went in, I started unleashing all of this trauma, man, all of this pain, man. Not all of it dealing with, living in the hells of North America, but just inflicted internal family pains, cultural pains, pains is dealing with self-reflection and value and worth. And man, because you don't really know how much you're dealing with. So as I went through it, man, I shared all of this like psychic weight, bro, and it was like amazing. And not only that, it put me in touch with what I consider the creator, the creative energy. And I was like, yo, this shit is amazing. And so I began to help my brothers in my martial arts circle. And man, we just seeing people change their lives. You know what I'm saying? I'm seeing like people on crack, just like, man, I don't need that shit 2 days afterwards. You know, people saw him drinking, like, man, I'm done with that shit. Coming up out my basement, like, I'm done, bro. I'm about to go buy some flowers for my wife and powder my children. You know, you find them brothers that was about to go kill somebody that's like, man, fuck that. I'm about to bury my gun and go see my mama. You know what I mean? And I'm seeing this every weekend, man. And I'm like, yo, this shit is miraculous. So that's what Kalendi was like, yo, this is what it's about, man. He said, this is the real movement that we about. But unfortunately, it was so taboo. You know, war on drugs and everything got our people so tabooed out that it was a hard pill to sell. And so that's when we began to like go across the country, go around the world, go to the continent, study with traditional peoples, learn how they deal with it, go to all of these scientific conferences, bump heads with the scientists who thought they knew what they were talking about, you know, just do on the ground research and was trying to bring it back to our community. The irony thing, our folks did not want that shit. They like, hell nah, bro, I got a taurine crystal and all I got to do is say this mantra, you know, and I'm like, listen, this is a deeper level. It's levels to the shit. And so it was so hard trying to introduce our community because in our defensiveness, you know, to open up and to just be totally vulnerable was something that was afraid. So for the last, 20 plus years, man, studying under Kalendi, and then of course he passed in 2004 years ago. And, he's such a profound impact on who I was, who I am, and who I may become. And seeing how he's impacted his world, and healed himself. I was like, man, and he honored me with, choosing me to travel with him, and choosing to share this stuff with me. And, the day before he passed, man, I got a call and he was like, yeah, Moudou. And this is cryptic because Baba Kalendi don't really, if anyone knew him, he wasn't one to offer his opinion often. So he'd call and be like, yeah, Moudou, the force is strong with you. I need you to keep pushing and take care of your family. And that shit was weird. And so then the next day, man, he made his transition and it just took me out. So anyway, that's a fast forward thing. So very much into the entheogens or psychedelics and its impact on Black people.
So I love that you shared that, and also the relationship between brothers, like that intimate relationship in sharing, caring, and also teaching one another. And I, from you, meaning the person that's the pupil, as the apprentice, you're teaching the person that is teaching you other ways of building that stronger connection to what's next. I gotta say this. It was last night, leaving the event we was at last night, Music Playlist Live, where it was a sister that says, I work in health and I've been working in HIV prevention in our community for years. And part of engaging in community is, even if you see the house burning, when you walk up to the doorsteps of houses in our community, the first question is going to be like, who told you my house was burning? So I'm going to repeat that for everybody. That's so it's like point. When you work in community, because I thought it was real impactful and it's been laying on my mind since she said it. When you work in community and you want to be an asset and resource for community, and you see the house burning, when you walk up to that front porch of the house burning, you have to prepare yourself for who told you my house was burning.
Yeah.
And this is another one of those layers going back to the story starting with Howard Petty and others of this is how disenfranchised and under-resourced we have been in America for so long that even if you were to offer something that could be of assistance, the first thing we're going to do is have our guard up.
Yeah.
Because nothing's ever been offered to us.
Exactly.
And that's
not
a
good
natural.
Yeah.
Like that's a natural thought process when you look at what's going on. So the understanding of like, yes, having something, but knowing that it's still going to be a path in that journey connecting with our people. And you talked about like healing for years. Like they say that alcoholism lives in a family for 4 generations in the DNA. So when you think about what we've dealt with as Black folks in America,
Yeah.
what's been in our DNA for forever, going back to like, I mean, Howard Petty's, Howard Petty's in my family, and all these black families, and not to just mention the crime bill. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is like reiterations of it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I didn't know your brother, but I know your brother because your brother was in my community.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So like, and then having the understanding that your brother is there and he still carried himself where your mother never knew, and your mother ended up in that seeing that solution through some drinking.
Yeah.
And that sisters in my community too, that fragments, the divorce and of them. Like, this is the experience to me of Black America.
A Black America.
So and then you trying to make sense of this, put on your suit, smile, and try to be in this arc of what would be success. As you say, like, our generation is in the economic model. I look at it like, so in the arc of getting in, let's start 1900s up. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, the Booker T. Washington thought process is like, look, we can take full advantage of what these white folks will allow us to do and control that, and we empower.
Yeah.
A little bit of that is truth. A little bit of that taken the wrong way can be ways we can be exploited.
Yes.
The W.B. Du Bois thought process at the time was, look, we need to carry ourselves to the most elite factor, and we need to kick ass and be 2 times better than these white folks. A little bit of that is truth. A little bit of that can leave some shit where it can be dangerous for us. Marcus Garvey thought process. Get our own shit. Leave these people all out of it. You know what? I love that. But due to the psychosis of where things at in community, a lot of that is truth.
Yeah.
But you got to prepare yourself when you do that we gonna be dealing with things because of back to that psychosis that's in us. So then you get into other iterations, just like your grandfather and my grandfather in this house. It's like, okay, let's go on and join their military. You come back and, boy, if you don't get your ass down there and help these white folks that didn't fight a day in their life and get this shit off. So it's like, damn, I can't get in the military. So then it's like, okay, other iterations. What if I try voting? Voting has not been the paramount. So like, even when people challenge me like, but people died for your right to vote, they were dying under the idea of that strategy was going to be something that will lead to liberation.
They died fighting for liberation.
As far as I'm concerned, has it been a little bit of help with that? Yes, but it has not been the overall grounding that we thought. And in our generation, the thought process is, if I get paid, if I become Jay-Z, don't nobody care about nothing that's black, white, and green. Has that led to a little bit of something? Yes, but the root of a lot of this is the spirituality that can exist within ourselves. And if we can be right here, if we see community, as far as I'm concerned, what we bring to the table is creativity, culture, and community, because together, and it's something you hear all the time. And I think when people say this, that's the power of it, but really true togetherness. And when the togetherness happens, it's going to be all types of problems. As I say, I love my people. If you know me, the number one phrase I say is I love my people, which is a way of saying it's going to be some interesting things when dealing with our people that come to life that you never thought would come. But I love my people because I know that through that unity and through that community, that's where we're at a level of something that many other people just can't get to.
Exactly. And then in maritime industry, they got this term called jettison. You know, like if your boat is towing too much weight, you jettison ballast, you jettison water or whatever you need to, so that you can increase that buoyancy and move faster. And that's what this is about. This is about us learning how to jettison that generational trauma so that we can move better into the future. Some of the contradictions we see, some of the things that short-circuited the movement. So like we look at the Panthers, they was doing great things, but then domestically it was abuse. It was neglected children. It was, you know what I mean? The drugs.
And then you look at it, because them Panthers was in their 20s.
They was in their 20s.
Me in my 20s, and being in that space. And if you read the Black Panther Code, I remember my dad got a book, because shout out my uncle Wally, another brother that's dealt with Nation and the Panthers. But like the code says, like, don't use drugs. Don't use drugs. It's like, you're going to use drugs, but you see it differently. Similar to the same thing when your brothers was younger. It's like, we doing this a little bit differently. You know what I'm saying? Because the science of what's here.
And the trauma, man, the real trauma that comes with just living in this world, and then like And so then you talk about our freedom fighters, those people who dedicated, created a better world, dealing with the traumas of our people, dealing with their own internal traumas. And so I realized, and this is something that Baba helped me realize, like, look, man, we're not going to be able to move future-wise healthily until we heal this internal shit.
I completely, like, even when we think of rest in peace Malcolm X.
Yeah.
But you think of, like, Malcolm X is writing saying, I know I will be murdered.
Yeah.
While interacting with his wife.
Right.
And his 4 children.
Right.
Like, that's got to be like to think to yourself, like, I know I'm going to be murdered.
Yeah.
And this work for the people. Because Tupac even said it. I felt like my mom sometimes cared more about the people than her people in the house.
Exactly.
And sometimes that duality, and if anybody knows, like, these second generation Panthers have dynamic stories.
Yeah.
Some of them sometimes can be some of the most conservative Republicans.
Or the wildest people in these streets.
Or the wildest people in the street. And you'd be like, how was you this? And because back to, like, the balance of where things were. You were like, I'm telling some of my Aisha Shule truths and Sorma, like, the African Center schools that people talk about and what clamor to, it still would take that collective community to pour into that.
Yeah.
And some of those people, like, some of those people was like, damn, my kid got kicked out of this school, this school, this school, this school. I know the African people ain't gonna kick them out, but they're not gonna come to them with the constructive thing.
Exactly.
Voodoo now gotta sit with,
gotta deal with
somebody that's been starved for
young
7 years.
Tay who wanna wild out, So yeah, dealing with those contradictions, man. And then we all have so it's important, because as best representative freedom fighters we want to be for our people, we have to be psychically, spiritually light. Another thing that I learned is going into these nominal realms is, and this is going to sound wild to some people, but this allows you to get ahead of the curve. In other words, reality is seated. It's not. Our orientation has always been that we are living linear, like through time, But traditional people, ancestors who utilize these substances, no, you can jump forward in time,
bro,
and seed reality, and then live through it.
You know what's so crazy?
Yeah,
I was having this because my lady Erin so much when we was talking this, and it definitely in that. Because through that, I was just telling her from what I learned in African Center schools as a kid when they were talking about the meditations of the Dogon Nation.
Yeah.
And the way that they would travel.
Yeah.
And the way that they would connect to stuff. Like, I'm a kid and it just didn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But it still was incepted and put in my brain. So,
yeah.
Shout out, man. Shout out Mama Bonisu for putting that seed in my mind.
Still putting it down out here.
So
yeah.
So like she would say, because first off, time is a social construct that was created to get productivity from people. Really, one of the first designs, hence the clock was one of the first things to start shifting from the agrarian age to the industrial age. So to get people off of farms in a factory. Hence, you got to have times.
Yeah.
Right. So like the idea and the concept of time and existence.
Yeah.
Like we've accepted that, and as we accept that, that becomes our reality.
Exactly.
I'm sounding real crazy to certain people. But I'm just giving you what I see as the critical thinking truth that I'm at right now.
Yeah.
So as we've accepted that reality, some of those nations, some of those other African nations that we really think of, and the civilizations and the tools that they had of traveling through different realms. So it's more than just what time could be. It's realms of consciousness. It's realms of possibly traveling universes. It's realms of traveling, like what you would say, considering time. Like some of that Dogon Nation was traveling like from the stuff I'm finding. It's like brothers was going all types of places. Hence, even on their ships,
exactly,
as they would travel, the one thing you will find consistently on all of those ships is somebody black. And it's like, damn, how did that black person know how to speak their language?
Exactly.
And he ain't never been there.
And that's
saying, wasn't no Google Translate in 1325.
And that's where it gets really interesting, is that when we start talking about, and this is something like when I went and studied amongst the Ga people of Ghana, man, this is, and I want to get too deep, but I'm gonna just share this because I got to. So their understanding reality is what they call a syntax, In other words, the way the elder taught me, they say when you imagine looking at a newspaper, right? Their view of reality is like the newspaper is the reality. It's created. The sentences are the day-to-day lives that we living through, right? In order to read the sentence, you have to go letter to letter, word to word, sentence to sentence to get an understanding. But nothing prevents you from going paragraph to paragraph. And so when you go into these hyperstates of consciousness, it's like instead of reading word letter for letter, word for word, sentence for sentence, you can move to a whole nother paragraph, you know. And that's how they say that's the syntax of time and reality in the universe. But anyway, that's just something that helped me understand. But yeah, going into these luminal states, not only do you understand how thought forms and how, you know, to my brothers and sisters that get super deep, yes, Illuminati and all of these different, I just say influences affect us on the energetic realm.
I would go as far as saying just I believe in balance.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I guess people would say in the realm of more Eastern philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
Yin and yang.
Yeah.
So if there's constructive energy,
yeah,
there's destructive energy.
Exactly.
So sometimes the thought process and focus, I think, on a lot of my homies that sometimes fixate too much on what the Illuminati could be and this. It's like whether it was created or whether it wasn't, it's already so much. Here go another one for you that I know you'll follow, but I want others to look at it. Neuro-linguistic programming.
Yeah, there we go.
Has already been so incepted.
Yeah.
Whether you put Mr. Charlie, the Illuminati, or whatever in the room, it's already incepted there. Because the belief system, hence this is why I love sociology and why, like, anytime I walk in rooms and I see somebody doing something so socially not normal, it's like, this is interesting.
Yeah.
Because we are already like socially designed. Most times we're, you know, you're going to walk and move in most settings the way that things are designed for you to walk and move.
Yeah.
It's a reason why a large university got this big lawn before you get to the big building within the university.
That's
right.
That's
incepting a thought process in you of this is larger than me.
Yeah.
This is something. It's a reason a lot of those Catholic churches, the cathedrals are so tall and all the paintings, because it incepts the idea, I'm so small in this room. If you take that same Catholic church and you put it in a recreation center day room, you're hearing the information differently.
Yeah, absolutely, literally. You know,
you're engaging in it differently.
Yeah.
So some of the social design of this, and some of that social design we've accepted collectively as society.
Yeah.
Hence, that's one thing that I honor so much, and hence why I'm so enthralled. Now you getting why I like marketing so much, because it's like looking at how people respond to stuff.
It's sorcery.
Like, people don't think about it like that because people want to remove themselves away, especially in America, which is based on the rugged individualism, where it's like, nah, you will follow a lot of the rules that you've been predestined and designed to follow. It's no reason why we all get on the freeway and we drive in this direction. We technically could just drive right over to the side.
Yeah.
But you'd be like, that person's crazy. And technically that's what we respond, because this person is doing something differently than what we would expect. Yep. But it's a trust that when I get on I-75, everybody gonna go around the same pace and in the same direction.
And it's literally sorcery. And that's when I started really getting it. Like, wait a minute, this is just sorcery. This is energetic warfare. And if anybody that was like really versed in it was African people. And so that's the thing that as I begin to share this information, it's funny that a lot of people who are more steeped in traditional African culture and worldviews and beliefs they're more taboo by this information. Even though they believe in Ankhs and the power of the crystal and the power of the mantras and the power of the Heka and the power of moon rituals, when I say, hey, yeah, and there's certain plant admixtures that you use to tap into the higher realm and talk with the Agun. Oh, no, brother, I don't need that, brother. I'm already, oh, no, I don't want it. Oh, that's the white, and so part of this thing is trying to get our folks to understand that this is as African as kente cloth, man. As African as a djembe, as African as black, and not only just African, it's global, and so one of the things I've been trying to do is just really because I get people in Czech Republic that want to hear from me in Spain and France and England and Germany and but I can't get my own folks, and so part of this thing is trying to get our people to embrace this understanding, because this is where, whether the Dogo, whether the Gambi people, whether Kemet, South Africa, all our class, IAT, when we talk about Grandi Nandi, any of our successful uprisings, they utilize these plants. They utilize tapping in the higher spirit realm. And the other thing I think is important too is so that, like I say, we get rid of all this baggage. We tap into our spirit realm. And not only does it do that, it reorients your understanding of who you are in the universe, as opposed to just being a actor watching what's going on. Like, man, you heard what Biden and Trump did? No, now you're on the field with them. Now you're thinking Pan-African internationalism. Now you're thinking, I can talk to my brothers and sisters in South America. I can create, so it frees us, it liberates us. But the main thing now is trying to get our people to understand it and embrace it properly, because as all things in America, they're trying to pharmacize it. They're trying to put it in a bottle. They're trying to create it the next drug, the next high. And I'm busting my behind we are, as a collective of us, trying to get out here and educate our people to the benefits, because we can't help with that alcoholism. 80% of us are depressed. We can't help with that,
And I think that's also about the lens.
Yeah.
And I'm empowering and know that I'm going to be doing some work. You may not see it on these channels just due to the... We're going to be doing some work together.
Yes.
Getting this message out.
Yeah.
Great interview.
Yeah.
Got to close with the classic Detroit is different questions on you.
Yeah. Go ahead, brother.
All right. First, your very first car. Year, make, and model, year you got it.
Ooh. Yeah. I had a 76 Cutlass.
Wow.
What? With the white mags. Oh my God. And the burgundy.
Somebody ain't take that.
Yeah, man. Yeah. That's back when I had comrades. But
okay, yeah. Them cutties, boy. Them cutties, you go in the gas station, you be like, hey
man. So, I was a classic 90s D-boy, Detroit D-boy.
Yeah.
So anyway.
You get a cutty, a Monte Carlo, or a Regal, boy.
Yeah. White mags. White on white, baby.
Where's the first place you went when you got it?
The first place I went when I got it. To the car wash, man.
Oh, so you was really, I'm about to get clean.
I was like, I'm going to get, it was white, so I had to make sure the rims was extra clean.
I got you. All right, you're the DJ at the end of the fireworks. You have to play 2 songs. What songs you playing?
Ooh, wait. Oh, man. Ooh, that's a curveball. You said at the end of the fireworks?
Yep.
Oh, snaps. Dang. Ooh. Oh, man. Ooh, I'm going to have to chew on that, man. That's a great one. The end of the fireworks. I don't know. It may be some Dead Prayers in it. Okay. I don't know. This offhand, like some Dead Prayers potentially,
All right. So I would pick Hell Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking damn, I can't think of the name. Anyway, yes, it'd be one of my classic Dead Prayers pieces.
All right, and then last, if you could rename Woodward after one Detroiter, who would it be and why?
The one Detroiter, it's a couple, but in the spirit of psychedelics, I would probably call it at the Kalindi E Boulevard. And I encourage my brothers and sisters in the community, man. He was a very stoic, quiet brother, but yeah, just do the research. My man, he kicked a lot of doors down and he just was quiet. Like in Sorma, started in the basement of his school, man, but he just kept it low. So yeah, I would name it after him.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
With that being said, thank you so much. This ain't going to be the last time. Thank you so much. This was a fun one, man.
This was, man. Thank you, brother.
Peace.
That's
a Detroit is different.
Man.
Thank you so much, man.
Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.